And what I'll start off with is just thinking through the lay of the land a little bit. So just to make sure कि हम सब एक ही पेज पे हैं, हम सब एक ही चीज़ों के बारे में सोच रहे हैं, बातचीत कर रहे हैं. So I start with Dr. Mariam. So if you could give us a sense of कि आजकल हालात क्या हैं in terms of technology. So what is the current state of technology use, adoption in Pakistan? आपके ख्याल से gaps कहाँ हैं? डिजिटल डिवाइड के बारे में हमने बहुत सोचा है, उसके बारे में सुना भी है. तो व्हाट इज़ द डिजिटल डिवाइड, व्हाट डज इट लुक लाइक, और उसके बारे में हम किस तरह से सोचें?
So thank you, Hadia. I'm going to start with some numbers to help everybody kind of understand what we're talking about when we talk about the digital divide, या जब हम technology access में जो gaps हैं उसकी बात करते हैं. So the latest 2022 Mobile Gender Gap Report that GSMA puts out every year that talks about how many people have access to what kind of technology. The mobile ownership for men, so the fact that they have a phone, 81% of men in Pakistan have access to a phone. Women, it's 52%. Right? So that's a significant gap right there between the ownership of a phone between a man and a woman. And I'm not talking about laptop or tablets because we're talking about the majority of Pakistanis who do not have laptops, tablets. You know, there's a certain segment that has access to those more advanced devices. This is access to a mobile phone. This could include a smartphone. It could also include a feature phone, जो आपकी कॉमन ज़बान में जिसको बटन वाला फ़ोन कहा जाता है, जिसमें इंटरनेट एक्सेस नहीं होता, टच स्क्रीन नहीं होती. When we talk about the internet, men have 45% of men in Pakistan have access to the internet through a mobile device. So they were the ones who will have access to the internet on their phones. But only 27% of women have an access to an internet, right? So when we talk about the digital divide, those are the numbers that we are talking about in Pakistan. And these numbers don't reflect कि अगर आपके पास access है, तो वो आपका अपना पर्सनल डिवाइस है, वो हाउस होल्ड डिवाइस है, वो शेयर्ड है, आपके पास दिन में 1 घंटे का एक्सेस है, आपके पास दिन में 2 घंटे का एक्सेस है, वो एक्सेस मॉनिटर्ड है कि नहीं है. So when we speak to women, and we've spoken to women across socio-economic classes in Pakistan, हमने गरीब औरतों से भी बात की, हमने मिडिल क्लास औरतों से भी बात की, फैक्ट्री वर्कर्स से बात की, डोमेस्टिक हेल्प से बात की, across Pakistan, so not just Lahore or Punjab. We find that when women have access, it is monitored or shared. Monitored मतलब कि अगर आप किसी से WhatsApp पर बात कर रहे हो, some male member of your household is going to monitor those chats. And the sad reality of the way technology is deployed in a Pakistani context is that it is completely oblivious to gendered differences and the gendered ways in which women use tech. Right? And let me give you an example of this. Actually, let me start with a broader example. When I moved to Pakistan 5 years ago, I grew up in Lahore, but I had been gone for so long and Lahore ka pura landscape had changed. And so I would find myself very frequently getting lost, and I started relying very much on Google Maps. Everybody here has at some point or the other used Google Maps, right? And you know, the chances are that most of you have also gotten lost through Google Maps. Because what started happening was that maps would take me through the most remote, sunsan, dark back alleys to get from A to B, because it has been designed with a very male perspective of getting from A to B as fast and as efficiently as possible, right? But Google Maps also knows my gender because it's linked to my Google account, so it knows I'm a woman. It knows I'm based in Pakistan. It knows raat ke 10 baj rahe hain. So it also knows residential areas kaun se hain. It knows kin areas mein kitni traffic hai. It knows kin areas mein aapke paas commercial दुकानें हैं जो इस वक्त खुली हैं. So it's not that trivial. It's a really, really simple thing for it to ask me, listen, you're a woman, Pakistan mein aap ho, 10 baj rahe hain, the fastest route is this, but there's a better route that might be safer for you. It might be 10 minutes longer, but it will take you through well-lit, crowded roads. Would you prefer the longest route? And this is a really simple thing to do, but it doesn't do it. So when I talk about gender design, those are the considerations I'm talking about. When we speak to women, they say that WhatsApp is like, it's the most ubiquitously used app in Pakistan, right? तो जब हम औरतों से बात करते हैं कि आई एम इंटरेस्टेड इन अंडरस्टैंडिंग दैट व्हेन योर डोमेस्टिक हेल्प गेट्स अ स्मार्टफोन इन हर हैंड फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम एंड द फर्स्ट टाइम शी हैज इंटरनेट कनेक्टिविटी, व्हाट डज शी डू, राइट? व्हाट इज द फर्स्ट थिंग शी वांट्स टू engage with? There are two. There's WhatsApp, there's YouTube. अगर आपके पास phone भी है, internet भी है, do you have the freedom to use it? Has it been designed with your considerations in mind? So I'm going to end here.
Anam, let's turn to you. And it would be great if you could, I know a lot of us have interest in education, हम सब काफ़ी statistics भी जानते हैं, लेकिन आप क्योंकि practitioner हैं, you've been working in this field for so long, ज़रा हमें कुछ inequalities के बारे में बताइए कि किस तरह से education access जो है वो constrained है, and it would be really great कि अगर आप लड़कियों के बारे में ज़रा हमें और बताएं.
And the reason for that is threefold, right? उससे क्या impact हो रहा है is the fact, सबसे पहले कि schools नहीं हैं. There are not enough schools to fill these 28 million children, and सबसे ज़्यादा disproportionately women are getting affected. So हर एक primary school, अगर 3 boys के schools हैं तो 1 girls का school है. And this disproportionately as the higher they go up ऐसे होता है. So 9 boys school तो 1 girls school. So the girls are at a disadvantage from the get-go. दूसरी चीज़ है 28 million children, लड़का या लड़की, you need an army of teachers to educate these students. उसमें अगर आप बहुत रिसोर्स भी लगा लें तो आपको 2 decades लगेंगे to create these teachers in order to teach this huge number of students. And तीसरी चीज़ is which disproportionately affects women is cultural norms. So जैसे ही बच्ची बड़ी होती है, there is the priority that ये घर के काम कर सकती है, इसको domestic help के mother की help कर सकती है, बच्चों की, छोटे बच्चों की help कर सकती है. Second, parents and especially in rural communities are uncomfortable sending girls to school post puberty. So ये हमारा एक cultural context है, and we need indigenous solutions to talk about what Dr. Mariam was just talking about, कि हम पाकिस्तान के context में रहकर we have to create solutions that are catering to our environment, to our particular constraints. So for me, I think कि जो brick and mortar वाला model है, जो आप schools बनाएं और इतने ज़्यादा teachers को train करें और लेकर आएं, this is not going to work for our country. We really have to understand कि we have to leapfrog traditional constraints that come in through these traditional ways. बहुत सारे teachers जो already in school में होते हैं, especially in rural communities, don't really have the experience or the training to be teaching these students. So through tech, you can leverage the best teachers and you can do a one-to-many model to get to many students and help increase in exam performance. And that's something that's documented on EdCasa's app, that students who use it tend to do a lot better in exam performance than students who have not been using it. अब तीसरी चीज़ आती है cultural constraints की. So again, technology जो जहाँ पे बच्ची जा नहीं सकती स्कूल, जो मीलों दूर है, she can still use tech closer to her house. So इसमें one of the solutions that we've designed is what we call the connected classrooms. So what we do is जैसे factories हैं, आपके पास infrastructure बहुत है, factories हैं, community centers हैं, we go to them and we equip them, we give them an entire classroom model, उनको हम projector और internet connectivity वगैरह provide करते हैं, जिसमें हम less than $1 per child per month में उनको service कर सकते हैं K-12 education को. So as far as I'm concerned, I think what we are heading towards and the challenges that also brings, because digital safety and security is a huge issue then. How are we catering to that? But for me, I think the question is no more कि tech की adoption होगी in education. I think already हो गई है. But how are we managing it? How are we safeguarding the interest and the rights and the protection of our students? That's an area that needs a lot more work.
So Shumaila, let's come to you. And could you build on what Dr. Mariam has said, what Anam has also talked about, कि I think जो मरियम बात कर रही थी उससे हमें ज़रा अंदाज़ा हुआ है कि घर के अंदर किस किस्म के मसाइल हैं when it comes to using technology. And what I'd like to get a better sense of from you is कि जब आप economic purposes के लिए टेक्नोलॉजी को इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं पाकिस्तान में, जैसे अनम ने भी कहा कि टेक्नोलॉजी इस्तेमाल हो रही है, and not just for connections but for the labor market, for getting education. तो इसमें मसाइल क्या हैं? क्या इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर लेवल पे कुछ मसाइल हैं? घर के मसाइल तो हमें थोड़ा बहुत अंदाज़ा हुआ है. Is it education? Is it lack of money? Is it some broader infrastructure issues?
So just taking a step back, we talk about the gender gap and gender divide. It translates in many forms that we don't even think about. And one of them is the digital transformation and the digital uptake and the gender divide over there. Ab gender gap index and reports ko dekhein, Pakistan is the lowest performing country. उसके different dimensions हैं, health है, education है, economic opportunities हैं, political empowerment है, and in all those areas we perform poorly, and that's also translating in other areas. There's very interesting research, there's social aspects, and there's also stabilization aspects of an economy and a country, which we've also experienced. So that linkage is very important. Now, in terms of utilization, the first manifestation of this gap is when you have very low levels of education, low levels of health in a country, the uptake and to be able to benefit from digital technology is also low, and the level at which you can interact with these systems is very low. So that's one. Then another thing is access to technology. So the most common and easiest way is through mobile phones. So it's been touched upon earlier that the access is low. 50% women have mobile phones, only 20% have smartphones, and only 27% have access to internet. So how will they engage with this technology, be it financial inclusion, be it e-commerce, education, health? So by not investing in this infrastructure, we've really limited ourselves in the way we can engage with this system. So we have to create access to these technology, make it cost effective, make it cheaper. But एक जब digital divide आ जाता है, वो आपकी society को have-nots में इतना divide कर देता है कि फिर आप उसको cover नहीं कर सकते. Access to finance, financial inclusion की बहुत बात होती है for economic activity. इसमें financial inclusion होगी कैसे जब आपके पास वो systems, वो infrastructure कहने को तो है, but वो इतना effective नहीं है. So for women to be able to access these financial inclusion platforms, they should be able to afford this technology. It should be available to it. Cultural norms discuss हो चुके हैं. Then another very important factor is economic opportunities. जो उसका तो gap बहुत ही ज़्यादा है. We're the lowest over there. वहाँ पे अगर आप अपना economic mix देखें कि what kind of economic activity are women engaged in, it's low value economic activity. तो फिर आप उनको लो वैल्यू इकोनॉमिक एक्टिविटी में वो इस किस्म की टेक्नोलॉजी के साथ इंगेज करने की उनको ज़रूरत नहीं पड़ती क्योंकि वो कैश बेस्ड एक्टिविटीज़ होती हैं. You elevate the level of their economic activity and the level of their economic engagement, they will be able to use this technology much better. Some of it is happening. For instance, e-commerce platforms को आप देखें, you see rural women, they're crossing out the middleman and they're reaching the urban market and they're getting a much better price. That's happening. But at what scale? It's very limited. Very few women who have the access, who have the confidence are doing it. Most cannot do it.
Do you think there's an appetite in the public sector, in the government, कि इन linkages को mend करें, build करें? And it would be good for you to think about this or tell us about this from an education perspective. So, जो आप leveraging technology की बात कर रही हैं in order to solve our education crisis, क्या public sector में इसकी appetite है?
Hadia, just before I get to the public sector question, I want to just build on something that Ms. Shumaila said. So, आप लोग अंदाज़ा लगा सकते हैं, like 2 साल पहले there was a lot of funding coming into Pakistan startups के अंदर, right? Like, and you saw airlifts and whatnot raising millions and millions of dollars. अब आप guess करें उसमें से कितनी startups थी that were backed by women, percentage wise? How many people think it was less than? Does one person think that less than 10% were women? How many people think it was more than 10%? That the funding that was okay. Most people think it was more than 10%. The actual number is 2%. So 2% of the women actually received that huge barricade of funding that the startups got. So at CASA, which is my company, was one of those very few companies jinko female founders were part of it and got investment. So absolutely broken linkages and access to financing is very limited. Women need to come on, at the leadership positions and design for women as well.
Shumaila, I'll ask you to build on this idea of the public sector. आपका क्या experience रहा है कि is there some sustainable way in which there has been a build up towards कि औरतों की economic and financial independence वो हासिल भी कर सकें और उसको और ज़्यादा हम support कर सकें either through tech or even otherwise?
I think जो सबसे बड़ी positive चीज़ हुई है in the last 8 to 10 years, the recognition that this 51% of your population is an important economic segment. And you can't just have social support programs for them, targeting the lowest level, addressing just poverty levels. it has to be across all segments. So you have to integrate them at all levels of economic activity. So the government understands that now. It shows in policies as well. We've got a number of policies. Financial inclusion policy has targets for women. Then you have the recent banking on equality, which tries to mainstream women within the banking sector, as well as bring, specialized lending products for this segment. उसके अलावा जो बहुत important काम हुआ है वो ये है कि refinancing and credit guarantee schemes, especially for women entrepreneurs. So that sort of addresses the financing issue. So you make this financing available to the banks at very low markup rates. They're very minimal, and they give targets to the banks to lend to women entrepreneurs. Now, all banks haven't taken this up, but the major ones have. So there is financing available on, easy terms for women. So that has really helped. अब ये है कि policy level का तो काम हो गया है. अब प्राइवेट सेक्टर को आने की ज़रूरत है. प्राइवेट सेक्टर ने कुछ छोटे छोटे तो काम किए हैं, जैसे बैंक्स ने थोड़े बहुत इस किस्म के प्रोडक्ट्स पुश किए हैं, मगर अब ये थोड़ी सी टेक्निकल बात है कि जो ये गारंटी स्कीम्स होती हैं ये पूरा रिस्क कवर नहीं लेती हैं. सो दे वुड प्रोवाइड 60% रिस्क टू द बैंक. सो दे कवर 60% रिस्क. द रिमेनिंग 40% वो भी बैंक लेने को तैयार नहीं है कि वो 40% रिस्क भी हम क्यों लें. तो फिर उसके बाद द प्राइवेट सेक्टर एक तो नीड्स टू टेक अ स्टेक इन दिस ग्रुप. सेकेंडली देन यू नीड अदर प्रोडक्ट्स दैट वुड हेल्प. सो इसको रिकग्नाइज करते हुए कारंदाज ने जेंडर फाइनेंसिंग का प्रोडक्ट लॉन्च किया था, विमेन वेंचर्स प्रोग्राम. उसमें एक तो डायरेक्ट फाइनेंसिंग होती है ऑन वेरी कंसेशनल टर्म्स. It provides business development support as well as concessional financing. There's mentoring and a lot of training and hand-holding after that as well, because we figured that that's the kind of support this segment needs. A segment that has been lagging behind so long, does not have the professional network to be economically active or compete in a business environment with regular businesses. Just finance would not solve the problem. So they need finance on concessional terms, and they need hand-holding and business planning and support. That is not coming from the private sector because obviously it's costly. So that will have to be part of the development program. So DFIs or governments will need to come up with such programs as well. Then another thing we did was that the uptake of these credit risk guarantees was low. So we entered into partnership with banks and we covered part of that, the remaining risk. So we took half the risk and left half to the bank, so that these products are pushed through, and the banks also meet their targets, and there's funding available to women in tier 2 cities. What happens is that tier 1 cities, where women are more business savvy relatively. Tier 2 होंगी कराची, लाहौर, इस्लामाबाद से बाहर. So tier 1 में तो फिर उनका थोड़ा सा बहुत exposure होता है. Those who want to do business, they have that kind of exposure at home. कुछ उनको connect कर देंगे, वो कुछ ना कुछ कर लेंगी. Tier 2 would be smaller cities, जो इसके बाद की आती हैं, but they are urban cities but smaller हैं. तो उनको बिल्कुल sense नहीं होती, उनका access to finance नहीं होता. So when you partner with these banks that have this kind of outreach, for instance, we've partnered with National Bank of Pakistan. They have presence in, they have 1,500 branches all over Pakistan. So that helps us reach out to smaller business women, informal businesses whose capital requirement is much smaller in smaller cities. So you sort of diversify out of main cities and you spread this economic activity amongst women in smaller cities as well. So we're trying to build those linkages, or the broken linkages, we're trying to mend them, because we're trying to figure out how do you lend to this segment. So it can't be a purely commercial product. You want to make them economically active. A is financing. B, you'll need several programs. A, आपको इसको segments में divide करना पड़ेगा. एक product सब segment को नहीं करेगी. जो below poverty line की हैं, उनकी और requirements हैं. जो above poverty line है, जिनके पास assets हैं, इन सब के लिए different products चाहिए. And अगर आपको employment based programs करने हैं, उनका different design होगा. So all this needs to come together. So what's happening is there is a policy realization. The policies have been launched. Private sector is doing a little bit. Some of private sector activities in ed tech, health tech is also providing economic opportunities to women. So women who want to work but can't work full time for 1 or 2 hours, they can become part of this platform. They can provide medical services, they can provide educational services, and they can get employment. But then again, they're reaching a certain segment that is educated, that has access to technology. Those don't need a different kind of a product. So things are happening, we need to bring them together.
I think जो शुमाइला बात कर रही हैं, मरियम, इसमें टेक का उन्होंने थोड़ा बहुत हमें बताया है, एंड आई थिंक फाइनेंसिंग का लेबर मार्केट से इतना गहरा ताल्लुक है. सो लेट्स, I like, because you worked so much on labor, I'd also like you to talk to us a little bit about health. हमने अभी तक health की बिल्कुल बातचीत नहीं की है. So इस स्पेस में we know के health में gaps हैं. We know, जैसे आपने कहा, economic opportunity में we are amongst the lowest in the world. हमारी जो maternal mortality rates हैं वो बहुत high हैं. हमारी infant mortality rates are high. आप जो metric उठाएं, we're performing fairly poorly in it. Not just that, हमारी जो performance है वो stagnate कर गई है, and we're being left behind other countries. So how can we use tech in order to fill these gaps? And do you think we've made any progress? I mean, the situation is pretty bleak. What are the rays of hope? And I think Shumaila and Anam ने rays of hope दिखाई हैं. आप भी अगर उस पहलू से भी थोड़ी बहुत बातचीत कर लें, that would be great.
The rays of hope, that's a tall order when you're looking at gender and technology in this country, right? Or gender and health. But I will say that, post-COVID, Anam sort of alluded to this as well. Post-COVID, there was a significant shift in the perception, use, and adoption of technology amongst women. Because, Hadia, you talked about, before I get to health, I'd like to spend a little bit of time on labor. You talked about labor, and post-COVID, जो आपकी औरतों की traditional forms of labor थी, they diminished. And so most of us let go of our domestic help, right? A lot of factories let go of the first people to get fired were the female workers, right? And so the traditional forms of low-income, informal labor that women had access to sort of disappeared. And so what you saw was this shift to women figuring out online platforms to do their work. And a lot of them actually started with these micro enterprises. And so we talked to a woman who was working in a factory, and then she quit, and she said, what I do is I get cloth from the market, and then I sell that online to other women, and I do that using, I'd never seen this before. Because she was low literate, and she wasn't very tech savvy, and WhatsApp is the only platform जहाँ पर उसको कुछ understanding थी जिसकी. So she was actually selling her cloth using WhatsApp के statuses. वो WhatsApp statuses पर अपनी picture डाल रही थी, और वहाँ से जो उसके groups में औरतें थी वो उनको देख रही थी. And she had become so profitable that she told us कि my husband is a daily wage laborer. तो मैं उसको कहती हूँ कि तुम रोज रोज धूप में जाकर ख्वार होते हो, तुम क्यों ख्वार हो रहे हो? I make so much money. अब तुम AC भी लगा सकते हैं, हम रेफ्रिजरेटर भी खरीद सकते हैं, तुम आराम से घर में बैठकर चिल करो, right? Like you don't need to go out and work in the sun anymore. I make enough money for the both of us. And so that's the kind of power that having access, some form of access. Once a woman gets online, she'll figure out a way to make that work for her, right? One of my favorite case studies, and I have a few students here, and they know this, and I've sent this to Dr. Hadia as well, is there in rural Sindh, there is an agriculture organization that went in and was training female farmers. अब ये agriculture training थी ज़्यादा, उसमें उन्होंने 15, 20, 30 मिनट की एक digital training भी डाल दी. And so what did the women, these are female farmers, what did they do with that? They went on Facebook and they started selling their cows directly to bigger markets, bypassing the middlemen. Right? And it took them a while to figure out how to take pictures, how to upload them. But once they figured they could do that, they started to look around for other things they could put online, like ghee and the straw baskets they were making, right? And it took 20 minutes of training to get them to figure out that they could completely, because one of the biggest challenges in this country that women face is one of mobility. Meaning आप घर से बाहर नहीं निकल सकते हैं. So if you are a farmer, if you are a woman who's raising livestock, आप बकरियां और गाय रेज कर रहे हो rural Sindh में, और कुर्बानी बड़ी ईद के करीब, you want to sell them to the bigger cities of Hyderabad and Karachi, you cannot go take your livestock yourself and do it. You can't. The only way to do this is to sell them to somebody else, a man who will take them to, and अगर वो मर्द 2000 कमा रहा है, वो आपको 10 दे रहा है. Right? That's the disparity. But if you can put them online and you can figure out a way to sell them through Facebook, then you are keeping all of that money for yourself, right? So there is, I think that's your ray of hope, right? Like every time I talk to women and I'm depressed, that's the news article I go back to, because it's such a fantastic use of technology by women who are low literate, low income farmers, right? And all they got was like 20, 30 minutes ki training on this digital tech, and they got access. And so I think there is so much potential for women to be able to find alternate, better employment, make money, set up businesses once they have access to tech and some form of training. Now, उसमें एक जो थोड़ा सा caveat है, हमने ना गिलगित में भी औरतों से बात की. गिलगित has a higher literacy, and they have lots of women who are running their own businesses. You know, शहद का है, jams का है. They're setting up their own micro enterprises. And we asked them why they're not selling that stuff to the rest of the country. And they said, because यहाँ पर we struggle with deliveries, infrastructure nahi. There is no TCS. There is no a courier service that can take our stuff and deliver it to the rest of Pakistan, right? So you certainly have these infrastructural issues, but I think COVID was sort of the jump that Pakistan's digital economy sort of needed, and that women needed to go online. And because घरों में financial इतना severe crunch था, जो आपका एक societal barrier था to women getting online and doing businesses and selling stuff online, that dropped, right? Because अगर घर में पैसे ही नहीं हैं, and your woman without leaving the house, within the safety of the house, can make money, you are now letting her do it. So I think that was a really, really interesting sort of shift that we've seen, because we were doing these interviews pre-COVID, and then post-COVID it was this really interesting shift. Now, one of the challenges where we have not seen that shift actually is health. We've not seen women leverage technologies too much for health, and where they have, the consequences are not always desirable, right? We do a lot of work on maternal health, and so we hang out at basic health units, which are your primary healthcare centers in the country. So आपके, you know, for those of you who are not aware, you have basic health units, जो थोड़े peri-urban, rural areas में आपकी government health clinics होती हैं, जहाँ पर आपकी दाइयाँ वगैरह बैठती हैं, lady health workers होती हैं, एक कोई gynecologist होगी. Then you have your secondary, and tertiary is your hospitals, right? जो इस area में बड़े हैं, वो Lady Wellington और Lady Aitchison हैं, लाहौर में ही maternal जो hospitals हैं आपके. So they see a lot of footfall from even neighboring Lahore and in Punjab. When we've hung out at basic health units and we've spoken to women, tech usage बहुत कम है, right? Most of us, like show of hands, who has, you know, been not feeling well, and the first thing they've done is Google their symptoms, right? Everybody. Now imagine not being able to do that, because that's the reality for the majority of the women in Pakistan. अगर आपको English नहीं आती, आपके पास अगर internet भी है और phone भी है, आपको इंग्लिश नहीं आती, आप गूगल पर जाकर नहीं लिख सकते कि यू नो लाइक मुझे 2 दिनों से बुखार है और मुझे सर में भी बहुत शदीद दर्द हो रही है और मैं डिजी फील कर रही हूँ, मैं क्या करूँ, राइट? There are a few women who have during their pregnancies looked for stuff on YouTube, and then, you know, when we're speaking to them, they say कि हाँ बाजी मैंने YouTube पर ये देखा था, मैंने उसको फॉलो किया तो मेरी तो मिसकैरेज हो गई, राइट? बिकॉज YouTube पर वेरीफाइड इन्फॉर्मेशन नहीं है. कोई भी किसी के पास फ़ोन है वो उठकर वीडियो बनाकर अपलोड कर सकता है. एंड इफ़ यूर अ लो इनकम लो लिटरेट वुमन, आप जब वो इन्फॉर्मेशन दे रहे हो, आपको नहीं पता है कि ये बंदा कौन है, वेरीफाइड है कि नहीं, लेकिन आपके दिमाग में जो मेंटल मॉडल है वो ये है कि अगर ये इंटरनेट पर है तो ये सच है. इट इज़ द सेम मॉडल फॉर एन अखबार ना, कि अगर अखबार में खबर छपी है तो किसी ने सोच कर ही छापी होगी, ठीक होगी, राइट? And so it's actually quite dangerous when low-income, low-literate women go online for health-related needs. And there is no intermediary, there is no middle way for them to have sort of some kind of negotiated access to this information. You know, when my teams go and talk to women at basic health units or at hospitals, they start getting a lot of health-related questions, and my teams are not qualified to answer these health-related questions. हमें फिर gynecologist के साथ sessions करवाने पड़ते हैं, because औरतें ये कहती हैं कि जब हम BHU में बैठे हैं, वो gynecologist के पास 5 मिनट है हमें देने को. अब उस 5 मिनट में हम अपने personal, intimate सवाल क्या पूछें? And then there are women who say कि जब मैं gynecologist के पास जाती हूँ, मेरी सास का साथ जाना लाजमी होता है. तो फिर मैं अपने जो इंटीमेट हेल्थ के मेरे क्वेश्चंस हैं, जो मेरे सेक्सुअल रिप्रोडक्टिव हेल्थ के क्वेश्चंस हैं, वो मैं कैसे पूछूं? मेरी सास पास बैठी हुई है, मैं किससे पूछूं, राइट? And so one of the things that we are exploring in collaboration with the Gates Foundation is, you know, one of the biggest gaps, in addition to all of this, one of the biggest gaps is कि अगर so much of the healthcare in Pakistan, especially when it relates to women's health, is informal, right? So for example, there is this woman, and we recently heard about her. She was in sort of a peri-urban area near Lahore. The only access she had to healthcare was a dai. तो उसको 5वें महीने में उसका पहला बच्चा था, उसको 5वें महीने में ना she started to feel very swollen and very uncomfortable. So she went to the dai and the dai said you're fine, ये होता है, it's normal. Then she went and said कि actually मुझे headaches भी बहुत severe हो रही है और मुझे dizzy चक्कर आते हैं. The dai said you're fine. Then she started to 6 months she went and she said but I'm not being able to see properly and the dai said it's fine. 7th month में she started to have seizures. तो उसको रात को दिसंबर में ट्रैक्टर के पीछे डालकर उसको BHU में लेकर गए. BHU वालों ने सेकेंडरी में भेजा, सेकेंडरी वालों ने टर्शरी में भेजा. ऑल दिस वाइल इन द कोल्ड शी इज ऑन द बैक ऑफ अ ट्रैक्टर. हॉस्पिटल जब वो पहुंची है तो शी इज कोमाटोज. हॉस्पिटल में जब उसको डायग्नोज किया इट वाज हाइपरटेंशन, इट वाज हाई ब्लड प्रेशर, एक्लैम्पसिया, राइट. She didn't make it, her child didn't make it. Pakistan has one of the highest maternal mortality ratios in the world, right? And we're nowhere near making our goals. Because if somebody had just told the midwife, or if the midwife had been able to input those symptoms in some system that had raised a red flag and said to the midwife, iska blood pressure over the next couple of months, keep an eye. If it exceeds these numbers, she needs to go to the hospital now. Because in her 5th month, if that woman had showed up to a hospital, she would have been fine. Blood pressure can be controlled. आप delivery जल्दी कर लेते हो. Eclampsia is not something you should die from, but it is the 3rd leading cause of death amongst women in Pakistan, right? So what we're working on is with Shalimar Hospital in Lahore, where one of the challenges with tech is कि आप जो हो non-textual systems create करना है, because hospital में तो already वो resources available हैं. Now you want to create systems that are for the peripheral workers, जो आपकी दाइयाँ काम कर रही हैं, जो आपकी midwives काम कर रही हैं, जो अंग्रेज़ी नहीं बोलती हैं, जो text के साथ नहीं comfortable. तो what do you do for them? So what we're piloting right now at Shalimar is a voice-based system, जिसमें through speech आप अपनी symptoms patient के enter कर सकते हो. उसकी पहले कितनी प्रेगनेंसीज हुई, अभी वो किस महीने में है, उसके क्या सिम्टम्स हैं, हर मंथ वो क्या एक्सपीरियंस कर रही है. वो हमारा सिस्टम जो है ये सारा डेटा स्पीच के थ्रू लेकर, उर्दू में, इंग्लिश में नहीं, उर्दू में स्पीच से लेकर वो हम उसको टेक्स्ट में कन्वर्ट करते हैं. वो टेक्सचुअल डेटा जो है वो एक लार्ज लैंग्वेज मॉडल ChatGPT-4 के पास जाता है. GPT-4 हैज़ ऑलरेडी बीन प्राइम्ड एंड कंटेक्चुअलाइज्ड विद द पाकिस्तानी कॉन्टेक्स्ट, राइट. वो उसको लेकर उसमें देखता है कोई चीज़ मिसिंग तो नहीं है, तो वो फिर वापस पिंग करता है कि जी आपने जो मुझे डेटा दिया इसमें ये चीज़ें आपने मुझे नहीं बताई, ये ज़रूरी हैं. So you can enter more information. It takes all of that data. It creates an electronic medical record, but more than that, it raises red flags. अभी हम शालीमार हॉस्पिटल में विद डॉक्टर्स पायलट कर रहे हैं. आई कैन नॉट टेल यू कि डॉक्टर्स जो पेशेंट का रिकॉर्ड उसको डायग्नोज करते हैं, often they are missing key things. So what the LLM is, the red flags it's raising is that this patient is severely anemic. Nowhere in the doctor's note. The LLM is saying कि आपने जो दवाइयाँ दी हैं, they are going to cause complications in the pregnancy. Doctors are not aware of this, right? And so we are using AI, we are using tech to try and plug the gaps that exist. Abhi we are leveraging it with midwives and doctors in hospitals and in BHUs to plug some of these gaps to ensure कि अगर एक midwife है उसको ये support हो कि अगर वो symptoms किसी system में डाले, वो system उसकी help कर सके कि भाई here are the things that you are missing, these are the things you need to look at and you need to send her to a hospital now, not 3 months down the line. Right? We're also working on other AI-based tools to allow young girls access to a secure chatbot where they can ask questions around their own intimate health, right? Like, I missed a period. What does this mean? Right? My periods are delayed. They're heavy. They're too painful. What do I do? Right now, the young people we talk to, they're not Googling this because they say uski history reh jati hai. They're not putting it on YouTube because they say कि वो history में आ जाता है और वो related उस तरह की videos दिखाना शुरू कर देता है and we are very uncomfortable doing this. One of the problems with GPT-4, and you know this is true for all technology that comes to our country, is that it's not based on data from this country, right? So जब हम अभी testing कर रहे हैं, हम GPT से पूछा कि I'm a woman based in Pakistan, here's my context, सारी उसको context दिया, उसे पूछा कि मुझे बहुत severe cramps हो रहे हैं, मैं क्या करूँ? And ये उर्दू में हमने किया है, ये उर्दू speech के through हो रहा है. GPT comes back and says आप एक पेड़ के नीचे जाकर बैठ जाएं. Where is this coming from? This is clearly not, like, you can't give this open system to young girls. So पहले अब आप बैठकर उस सिस्टम के डेटा को देखो और आप उसको फाइन ट्यून करो और आप उसको contextualize करो before you can even start to make this available. So there are significant challenges and ethical problems with using this tech. But I think that this sort of creates really exciting possibilities in the health space to plug some of the really significant gaps we have because of not having enough resources.
Thank you, Mariam. So we're going to end the session with last thoughts from all our panelists. Shumala, let me come to you first. I'm going to pick on जो आपने बात की थी कि हमारी जो ख़वातीन हैं वो low value added chains में हैं. And you talked extensively also about women who are being left behind. तो आपके ख्याल से हमें क्या पॉलिसी चेंजेस या क्या कोलैबोरेशंस को ज़्यादा हाईलाइट करना चाहिए या बिल्ड करना चाहिए कि हम इन ख़वातीन के लिए जो है वो गैप्स प्लग कर सकें?
I think इन ख़वातीन के लिए तो सबसे पहले access to technology है. So you make these phones affordable, you make this technology affordable so they can interact with it. First step वो करना होगा. Secondly then now this is also a segment जिसकी इतनी education level नहीं है, but they can do business. So bring them onto e-commerce platforms, give them access to markets, link them up. So these platforms can do a lot of work. Some of them are also bringing on women from peri-urban rural areas, but it needs to be grown. इनसे थोड़ा सा अगर आप ऊपर आते हैं तो even with high school education, women can undergo certain training and they can work in the IT sector. they कर रही हैं, coding कर रही हैं, software work कर रही हैं. So वो उनको girls that code, they're doing amazing work. I've come across girls जिन्होंने वो trainings ली हैं and वो घर बैठ के they're gainfully employed. So उनके वो mobility का issue तो वहीं पे निकल गया, घर बैठे they're earning. So that's what needs to increase. ये बहुत छोटे level पे हो रहा है. So अगर एक certain level of education है, these training programs are must for women. They should be introduced. उसके अलावा this COVID में हमने remote working काफ़ी experience किया. But internationally जब लोग काम करते हैं, remote working services देते हैं, उनकी payments का बहुत issue होता है. So international payment systems को simplify करने की ज़रूरत है, remittances को simplify करने की ज़रूरत है. Smaller amounts तो आ जाती हैं, but थोड़ी सी बड़ी amount उसको simplify करने की ज़रूरत है, because there are a lot of people who are educated, who are sitting at home, who are on these international platforms. They can provide these services, they can bring in dollars. They can't because payment systems are difficult. इसके अलावा I think एक और चीज़ वो बात हो चुकी हुई है, मगर वो बात बिल्कुल सही है कि जितने भी ये टेक्नोलॉजी डेवलप होती है, they are designed by men and they look at men as a segment. It's men and women are not a homogeneous segment. ये हमने experiments किए हुए हैं. Men and women interact with technology very differently. So अगर आप इन apps पे UI UX women पे टेस्ट करेंगे तो उनकी uptake बेहतर हो जाएगी. So design technology that women can easily use and they respond to better.
अदम से पूछती हूँ, फिर आप पे आती हूँ. एजुकेशन क्राइसिस कैसे सॉल्व करें हम?
कि एजुकेशन का एक वैल्यू है टू देयर फैमिली, टू द लाइवलीहुड. अब सप्लाई साइड इशू है. सो अब वो सप्लाई साइड इशू किन तरह से, किन इनोवेशन से थ्रू हो सकता है? वी नीड टू बी मोर ब्रॉड माइंडेड एज अ सोसाइटी टू अडॉप्ट न्यू आइडियाज़ एंड नॉट सॉर्ट ऑफ बी लाइक ये ऐसे नहीं होता. सो आई थिंक दैट कीपिंग एन ओपन माइंड एंड looking at other women, how they're doing things, looking at role models as well, which is not related to education, but I kind of wanted to mention it, given that we are a gender panel. But yeah, I think technology is really filling in, has potential also.
And we'll end with you, Mariam. What do you think are the game changers, and how well placed are we to take advantage? And I don't mean the game changer in the local context, even globally. How well placed are we to take advantage of those game changers?
So I think the game changer right now, and I think in the next couple of years, what you're going to see is fundamental shifts in how we do things based on the AI capabilities that we're now seeing. And just GPT-4 came out beginning of this year, and look at where we are now with the tech that's available through large language models and generative AI, right? But I was in Africa last week, and you have these projects that are using large language models for financial inclusion, right? They are voice based. आप उसको जाकर कहो कि मेरा monthly income इतना है और इतने मेरे बच्चे हैं, ये उनके खर्चे हैं. It will come up with a budgeting plan for you, and then you can come back to it and say, I'm thinking of buying this. Can I buy it? And it will come up with a plan to tell you when you can buy it and how you can buy it and what you can afford, right? It will make a plan for you for your kids' education. It will adapt that plan in real time based on what your household purchasing looks like, right? And this is all through speech. And so I think the traditional models that we have of this sort of one-dimensional tech, this gone out the window, right? Now you have, I mean, the kind of exciting work that's happening globally. You have, ed tech, health mein, education mein, financial inclusion mein, all of these really fabulous products that are leveraging generative AI to do really, really interesting things, right? I don't think we're well placed for this at all. I don't think there is any policy in place. And the thing is, and here's what's very worrying to me as somebody who works in the tech space. Like, there's very limited tech in my own household, right? Like, I have a 14-year-old and she doesn't have a phone and she's not getting one until she's 20, right? Like, that's the goal here. Because I understand the dangers of unrestricted, sort of unpoliced digital tech, right? And right now, the digital space in Pakistan is not policed, and then you throw AI in the mix. We all have read that case of this judge somewhere that used, a chatbot for a ruling. This is really problematic because you cannot use these tools without understanding कि data कहाँ से आ रहा है, किस चीज़ पर base है, कौन सा उसका corpus है, right? And then you have massive privacy challenges when you're using these tools as well. And there is, one of the things that I was asked at this conference in Africa was like, what is the governing body around AI in Pakistan? What are the conversations that are happening, and what are you guys thinking about some of the challenges? And it was so sad to say there is no governing body, there are no conversations, there is no thought to what this is going to do to us, because it is going to also get rid of a lot of the jobs. It is going to fundamentally shift our labor market as well. There is no conversation. There is nothing.
Thank you to all the panelists, and thank you to all of our audience members. It's been a fantastic discussion, and thank you all for engaging with us.
सब्सक्राइब करें और बेल दबाएं ताकि कोई खबर रह न जाए।